Good morning, everyone. I'm Karen Trivette, and I'm an associate professor and head of special collections and college archives at the Fashion Institute of Technology, part of the State University of New York. We are in New York City on campus at FIT, and it is about 10:16 in the morning on September 11th, 2019. And we are very pleased to offer you another installment of FIT Talks, which is the oral history program of the Fashion Institute of Technology. We are extremely happy to have with us today our special guest, Taur Orange. And Taur, welcome to FIT
Thank you very
Talks.
much. Thank you.
I'd love to ask you if you will tell listeners and viewers what your role is here at FIT.
To terrorize my students. My formal title
Very
is
good.
Director of the Office of Educational Opportunity Programs.
And for those who aren't familiar with an EOP, tell us what that is.
And thank you for the opportunity to
Yes,
explain
ma'am.
it, because it is probably the model of best practices in higher education that often goes unacknowledged. EOP is specifically a New York State SUNY admissions program, which has as its mission to identify college-capable students who, for whatever reason, did not perform as highly as they could have at the high school level, and most importantly, have historical socioeconomic disadvantagement.
Right.
So we know that all across the state there are young people who crave the opportunity to do post-secondary education, but for some of this kind of the life challenges that they're experiencing, think that it's not possible. And our job is to help identify them, support them in this pursuit, and to help graduate them.
That is what we call an honorable mission, if I may say so.
But for the terror part, yes.
Oh, exactly. Well, it has its place. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions that we ask most of our interviewees, and perhaps trail off if a path presents itself. First of all, please tell researchers a little bit about your childhood.
Perfect timing. I attended a reunion just 3 weeks ago,
Oh, fantastic.
and it was the first time that I attended the reunion on the site of where I grew up. I've attended events that were sponsored by the sort of the reunion committee, but I had not gone back except for one time, but not for a reunion. I grew up in the Bronx. I'm a proud product of the Bronx. We've debated for some time what part of the Bronx. It's not the South Bronx, it's not Morrisania, but I grew up in an area that is a bit west of Bruckner Boulevard, north of Hunts Point, south of Castle Hill.
Boy.
We're not quite sure what we call it, but I grew up in a solid working class community, a solid working class integrated community. I remember my parents sharing with me and my siblings the stories prior to my birth of having settled in what was called the Quonset huts.
Oh,
The
wow.
Quonset huts apparently were barracks that were set up for returning vets, young vets, and public housing was built really to accommodate these young men who were returning from the war, World War II,
Right.
to establish their families. So my parents were among the first, in fact, were the first to settle in a public housing community called Bronxdale houses. My two older brothers were born in the Quonset huts, but I was born in Bronxdale houses and loved it. Loved the expanse of it. My particular housing development went up to the 6th floor. There were 3 sections. We played outside. In fact, it was almost like an edict, go play. We played, but I loved the expanse of it, and I loved the sense of community. I loved knowing that other children were raised, although we weren't able to articulate it quite in the same way, were raised with the same value system. And the value system was very much rooted in sort of an ethical, what's right, what's wrong. When you do something wrong, you can try to hide it, but eventually you have to go confess. And in a sense, even though it was an integrated community, it was certainly not a perfect setting. There were issues of racism that would rear their head. And what I'm grateful for is that even in that environment, there was a message that said that no one is better than you.
Right.
And that you are as good as everyone else. But a product of the Bronx.
Awesome. And tell us a bit about your educational background.
So I attended two different public schools in the area, and the issue of racism, in fact, kind of informed where I attended school, because there, unbeknownst to us as children, there was behind the scenes a battle among some of the parents as to where African American and Puerto Rican children would attend school and where the Italian and Jewish kids would attend school. So I began in one public school, and then once parents of color fought a particular battle, I was transferred back to a public school that was nearer to our residence. And from there, attended a local junior high school that was quite integrated, and went on to, begrudgingly I might confess, the Bronx High School of Science.
Oh, wow.
There was a local high school that had just been built and opened, and of course I wanted to be there with all of my friends.
Oh.
And my mother, to her credit, said not no, but heck no. And off I went to take the test for the specialized schools, and the rest is history.
My goodness.
Quite by happenstance, although all things I think are sort of in divine order, a friend of mine went off to Wesleyan. And I remember him coming back his freshman year, Christmas, holiday time, convincing my father that I should apply to Wesleyan. My father had it in his mind that I would attend college locally. He wanted me at Fordham or somewhere locally. He did not want me to go away. I was the youngest and the only daughter.
Oh, boy.
And somehow my dear friend Ted convinced him that I should at least be allowed to apply to Wesleyan. And I did. And so the rest is history there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so you were there 4 years?
4 years.
Yes, yes. And did you continue your education from there?
I did.
And tell us about that.
So I attended NYU
Oh, very good.
for higher ed administration until I ran out of money. And then finished over at New York Institute of Technology.
Very good.
Shifted my focus to human relations.
Uh-huh.
And it seemed to be a more comfortable fit for me. Yeah.
It's nice when that works out.
Yes.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, the fantasy or the reality? I mean, the fantasy was I would have loved to have been a dancer.
Oh, wow.
But I was not a dancer.
Okay.
But I would have loved to have been.
Uh-huh.
In a practical way, I aspired to dentistry.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
And it wasn't until second semester of my freshman year at Wesleyan that I realized not only was I not strong enough in the sciences, but I didn't love the sciences as much as I thought I did.
Sure.
And so psychology and religion began to take root.
And that's the mission of college, is to help you figure out what you want to do versus what you don't want to do.
Absolutely. That's the value of a liberal arts education.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But yeah, dentistry was my first first real focused professional aspiration. And to this day, I'm probably the only one on the planet who still enjoys going to the dentist and asking questions.
Very good.
I want to see the charts.
I'm jealous. Tell us about your first job.
Oh my gosh. Fordham Road in the Bronx, Alexander's department store,
Oh boy.
in bras and brassieres.
Oh, how fun.
And it was absolutely overwhelming. Overwhelming.
Yes.
Overwhelming. Overwhelming, did I say? Yeah, that I will never forget. Fordham Road had an Alexander's department store. There was one on Fordham Road and one on 3rd Avenue in the South Bronx.
Right.
And I was about 16 maybe, or
That was
17.
my next question.
16 or 17. And I was at a total loss, but quickly made it happen.
Cool.
Women were coming in droves. And I was like, oh my God. So I went home and I asked my mother, how the heck do I fit women for bras? How the heck do I know their bra size?
Talk about human relations.
She was very amused by it. But I stayed, I began during the summer. And I think I gave it up, or my mother made me give the job up, probably in the early months once I started school again.
Yes.
So I was there for maybe about 3 or 4 months.
Okay,
But
cool. So let's fast forward. What was your first job in terms of what you would call professional? A professional position after your education?
Good question. Because in some ways I really do consider that job at Alexander's the starting point of how to work with the public.
Yes,
And
definitely.
how to adjust to people's needs and to address people's needs. But formally, I would say it was I had a summer job. The Association of Black Social Workers. Now, this was while I was attending Wesleyan, but during the summer, I was hired to work with 3-year-olds.
Wow. Ooh.
Post Wesleyan, my first professional job was with an organization that I'm still proudly affiliated with. It had been called Boys Harbor. It's now called the Harbor for Boys and Girls, located in East Harlem.
Nice.
And founded by Tony Duke of the Duke family. And I was very lucky, quite honestly, to have an older brother who worked there and who thought that I would be a good fit for the organization. And so I was hired to help, not write grants, but to help assist the organization's grants writer,
Right.
Elsa Morse.
Wow.
And gosh, did I learn a lot.
Trial by fire.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And so that's what I do now, of course, is I write grants.
Yes.
But Elsa Morse was my first mentor without my even knowing that she would become a mentor for that.
Wow.
But I assisted her. Yeah.
Amazing.
And
Any
then,
any other highlights that come to mind?
So I stayed with the Harbor for 6.5 years and became a very young director for some of their early signature programs, Upward Bound, Talent Search, and they had a program for health sciences for high school students, and so I became the director of those programs. Yeah.
So what was the path to your current position?
Attending a meeting here at FIT for a grant that was shared by several other organizations. So it was a particular grant. FIT had that same grant. We would rotate where we would meet, and on this critical day, Mildred Rothman, bless her spirit, Mildred Rothman had been the chairperson of the Educational Skills Department here, said to me as I was departing the meeting, Taur, do you know anyone who might be available or interested in a position here as a student advisor? And I said, no, but if you have a flyer or something, in those days it was a flyer,
Yes.
I'll take it back to the harbor with me. And during that train ride, I said, what? I could do this with my eyes closed. And the salary's higher and it's less stress. And so I contacted Mildred when I arrived at the harbor and pitched me. And I'll never forget, Mildred said, I don't think so.
Oh boy. Did she give a rationale?
Yeah, she said you're overqualified, and I'm looking for someone, maybe right out of grad school, and I was crushed.
Oh.
And by the next morning, I got up the gumption to call her again, and to convince her that I should at least be granted an interview. And in that room, there were 5 women.
Oh.
Irene Buckman,
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Susan Jacobson, I'll never forget it, Gail Ballard, Mildred Rothman, 7, Mona Schwartz, and Sheila Pyros.
Wow.
And they interviewed me. I convinced them that I could be an asset, that I had worked with young people, and that I had something that I thought I could bring to the position.
Success.
And that's where it began. And I envisioned that I would be here 2 years. It's 37 years later.
Why the 2-year threshold?
I wanted to go to grad school. And
Oh, okay.
I just didn't see myself being a student advisor forever. And I didn't particularly see myself in higher education. That wasn't something that was on my radar.
Goodness.
And so, yeah, 2 years turned into 37 years.
Amazing. Well, congratulations on such a wonderful tenure.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your time here at FIT. We understand the beginnings. Take us down that journey.
So I stayed with the department, Educational Skills Department, for 11 years. And was during that time had done some work with EOP. Betty Merritt at that time was the director of EOP. And when Betty retired, I was asked if I might consider the position. And I was a little ambivalent, to be honest. I heard quite a bit about some of the challenges of the position and the lack of institutional support.
Oh.
And I wasn't sure whether or not I wanted to take that on. But I interviewed, and I was asked to take the position. I laid out some requests that for me were non-negotiable if the program was going to be as successful as I felt it could be. Those requests were declined.
Oh.
And so I declined the position.
Really?
And so for 1 year, I went on with my life.
A whole year?
An entire year, and I was fine with it. And I
Wow.
returned to the Ed Skills Department and thought nothing of it other than what a loss on their part. But I felt that because I had heard about some of the challenges and the lack of institutional support. And I said, wow, they're missing the boat. They're not getting it.
Right.
And after 1 year, I was approached again with, I would say, about 3 of my 5 requests. A promise for a 4th, a 5th that they said it was impossible, and I reconsidered and I took the position.
And do you recall what those requests were at the time?
Sure. I wanted independent space for the program. It was a room in the dean's area in B221.
Okay.
It was a room. I wanted independent space for students. I wanted a full-time secretary. I was presented with a scenario where I would be sharing a secretary with the dean of students. Part of one day, and the other part of the day I would have her. So I wanted a full-time position. I also requested that I have faculty status, non-classroom faculty status.
Nice.
What was the 4th one? The 4th one was, I'm forgetting. There was one that was non-negotiable that they said they didn't feel as though they could. Oh, that I wanted an assistant director. That's what it was. I wanted an assistant director. And the 5th was that I wanted the option to know that I could have counselors. That I can't be bottle washer and cashier and everything else. I wanted to be able to have a staff.
Right.
And I wanted an institutional commitment that they would bring on some people.
Right.
Yeah.
And so most of those were met initially. And have you seen them fulfilled completely over time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I'm really proud to say that.
That's
and
great.
of course, no one ever does it alone. I've had some amazing people come and go, and some people who stayed with me 17, 18, 20 years.
Amazing.
But I have non-classroom faculty status. We have independent space. The institution provided us with a secretary, a full-time secretary, and I went from being the counselor to now having 3 full-time counselors and 1 part-time counselor. The college does not pick that up, but SUNY made that commitment. And so we went from something like 75 students to we service 255. And SUNY has asked us to get to 400 because they're pleased with the outcomes.
That's amazing.
So, yeah.
When you think back on your 37 years, what challenges and successes really stand out for you?
Specific to me or to the institution?
Let's say to you first.
I would certainly begin with the achievement of some of those goals. I really was very committed, is putting it mildly. I was adamant that the program be respected for its potential and that the students of the program be recognized for their potential. And I think we're there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I take great pride in that. When this institution now hears EOP, they think of students who are operating at a very high level. They think of a program that demands quite a bit out of its students and that values excellence.
Well, it's clear you've had more successes than challenges. What opportunities still exist that you'd like to see fulfilled?
I think there's always room for more institutional support. I think I shared with you earlier that in this period of budgetary retraction, that a secretarial line that we fought so hard for has been removed. That to me I just think is just almost silly. I mean, how do you run a program of this magnitude without secretarial support?
With increased expected outcomes.
Yes. In the office, we also over time grew the office beyond just EOP. It is the Office of Educational Opportunity Programs, plural. And so there is a child care program for FIT students who have child care needs.
Very cool.
And we also run a pre-college program that we run in conjunction with the college's pre-college program. So we work with students who have socioeconomic need at the high school level as a feeder for EOP.
Sure.
So we have a scholarship that the foundation here at the college has been very generous with for more than 20 years.
Amazing.
And we bring those students on. We have them participate in an expanded Saturday program, but we pay the scholarship for them to take a course in Saturday Live. So they attend an hour earlier, and they stay 2 hours later.
Wow.
And the foundation supports that.
So you mentioned earlier when I asked the successes versus challenges question if it should apply to you or FIT. Let's turn to the wider lens of FIT. What are some of your insights in those terms?
I think FIT is, in some ways, is still grappling with an identity issue. And there's no right, in my opinion, certainly, there's no right or wrong identity. I know that there's been a really hefty push to legitimize the liberal arts offerings.
Yes.
As, in my opinion, there should be. I often think, however, that the institution is marketed as sort of a quasi-private institution.
Yes.
It is a public institution, and its mission is very rooted in access. It's very rooted in affordability and in diversity.
Absolutely.
And I think those goals we are achieving. I think we could achieve them a little bit more quickly and aggressively, but I do see progress.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Well, when you think back on your 37 years at FIT, are there any events or experiences that just immediately come to mind that you'd like to share?
I'm what's the word? Grateful and surprised that the direction of the office went in a way that began to include some events offerings, that we would not just tethered to desks advising students as to whether or not they should take 12 versus 15 credits.
Right.
In fact, and this was of course, Advisement Center.
Oh,
That
right.
was the mainstay of our work, was to advise students who were considered at risk on helping with the educational mapping, but also the concrete academic advisement. Should they take 15 credits? Should they take 17 credits? And then I began very early on to say, there's more to this office. And so we began to partner with different industry professionals to present events on campus that I think really had significant impact. And one particular gentleman, pardon me, Leonard Davis, who is an FIT alum, has produced many of our events and continues to. But we had a major event, Versailles 73,
Yes.
where we brought back to campus some of the significant models who participated in that legendary, really legendary fashion show in Paris.
Very cool.
I think we were able to bring back like 8 of the 10 original models.
Amazing.
And that to me was extraordinarily impactful.
Oh.
We recently partnered with Bernard Dillard, who's a professor in math and science, to bring to campus the Central Park 5.
Oh, yes.
We were able to bring 3 of the 5. And so those kinds of events, I think, give dimension to an office that help promote diversity. That I remember saying to Bernard, it's interesting to collaborate, to bring to campus these young men, because they probably would have been EOP students were they not incarcerated. Had history not impacted them the way it did, these would have been young men that we would have brought to campus in a different capacity. They probably would have come through EOP.
Amazing.
Yeah. So those are the kinds of things that
Yes.
through the years have been meaningful, have been extraordinarily, very meaningful.
How has the establishment of the Office of Diversity had an impact on your role and your program?
I think the office has been enormously supportive of our office, enormously so. The most obvious reason is because the gentleman who heads up that office, Ron Milon, Dr. Ron Milon, is a product of EOP himself.
Ah.
He was EOP at SUNY Brockport many, many years ago. And so he gets the mission and he understands how incredibly valuable
Great.
the program is, both in terms of access, but also in terms of completion. He says that were it not for EOP at Brockport, he doesn't know, given what was happening in his own personal life, whether he would have completed college.
Right.
And here he is, he's went on to obtain a doctorate.
PhD.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
awesome. How would you describe your day-to-day at FIT?
Robust.
Yes.
It's full.
Yes.
It's full. It's full in a rewarding way. Mm-hmm. It's always a combination of time-sensitive administrative work and managing a staff and lending vision and guidance to an office. It's extracting the best from other people, my staff. It's setting expectations for students and seeing students. Students drop in all of the time. They don't always make appointments. And so responding to that. Yeah.
So I know you best from our work on committees together, faculty senate committees. How has that interaction had an impact on your time here at FIT?
I always, during my time at FIT, I always reminded myself of how important it was to be a part of the fabric of the institution and to be careful not, as I said, to just be tethered to an office, but to make certain that I was a participating member and a contributing member of the campus. So I love my committee work.
Yes.
This semester I'm with, and this year I'm with the executive committee.
Oh,
Faculty
very
Senate
good.
Executive committee on the diversity council.
Cool.
The committee on academic standards, and that gives context for the work.
It does.
It gives real context for the work.
And it allows you to meet so varied a cross-section of your community members.
Yes, yes.
It's very rewarding, I think.
And to help secure the programs that my staff and I work with. So, but I find it very rewarding to work with colleagues.
Yes.
I've developed some very deep friendships as a result of the committee
Agreed.
relationships.
And you mentioned your staff. How large is your staff at this point?
I have a coordinator for the Saturday program. I have a coordinator for the child care program. I have 3 full-time counselors for EOP and a part-time counselor. And I am always a cup is half full optimist that the secretary of our dreams is on her way back to us. Yeah.
I'll push good vibes and rhythm in that direction.
I'm always half full.
All right. Do you remember someone saying something to you that had a big impact on your life?
I can't, 2 things come to mind, really 3. And I can't swear that this was ever said to me, the first one, but it's a tape in my head.
Sure.
And that is, I grew up in a home where my father stressed that we were not better than anyone, that we should not live life thinking that we were better than anyone else. That was balanced, I won't say countered, by balanced with a message from my mother who felt adamantly that no one was better than us.
Right.
And there's a subtlety in that.
Stereo of the message.
Yeah, I think she wanted to send a message to my dad.
Yeah.
You can equip them with that egalitarian stuff if you want, but I want my children to know that nowhere on this planet are they to assume that anyone is better than they. And again, I don't know if my mother would have said that, but she certainly signaled that.
Yes, messages can be sent without words.
Yes, yes. And so from a very young age, I kind of got that. Awesome. And I hope that that's how I live my life, that I treat people equally, and that the minute I smell the scent of superiority in my direction, it's a trigger for me.
Yes.
It's a trigger. My oldest brother referred to me as a warrior,
Cool.
and I didn't always feel that way, that it was cool.
Oh.
But he's deceased now, and it has carried me.
Yes.
Yeah.
What book? I'm a librarian, so I have to ask this question. What book has influenced you the most?
You're not making this easy.
No, ma'am.
Paula Giddings, When and Where I Enter.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about that.
For many years, I worked in the employ of the Archdiocese of New York, leading a citywide leadership program that was founded by he's now a Monsignor, John Meehan, and supported by Cardinal Cook. It had been all male for many years. When it went co-ed, Monsignor Meehan came and asked, this was 1986, if I would assist him in running the women's section of the program. And I was charged with developing a curriculum. And these were 16-year-olds. And I threw the kitchen sink at them. And so it forced me to do a lot of reading. And there was a book that just was so impactful for them and for me. When and Where I Enter is sort of a definitive history of the African American woman's experience.
Oh, wow.
From the arrival as Africans and the transition into the uniquely painful experience of becoming African Americans, the trials and the enormous triumphs specific to this country.
Yes.
Yeah.
When was it written? Do you recall?
I want to say during the 80s.
Okay.
When it was a fairly recent release. So I'm going to guess maybe around 83.
Okay.
But When and Where I Enter.
Cool. Can you tell us a little bit about your future plans? The day is young.
I will hold some of it. I will hold some of it back. I don't want to jinx it.
Okay.
I would say I am actively thinking about my next journey. I am utterly amazed at how quickly time has passed. And so I would say the next journey I'd like for it to involve some consulting, some continued work with access organizations, access initiatives, getting young people into quality schools. I'm the beneficiary of an amazing education, and so I know what it yields. And I see doors shutting, and I know that we can keep doors open.
Yes.
Yeah.
And never assume they'll stay open.
Yes. Yes.
What would you like for people to remember about you?
I'm not sure why I'm being emotional.
It's fine.
That I've been very fortunate.
Yes.
I've been enormously fortunate. And there's not a day that goes by that I'm not aware of that.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
What question did I not ask that you wish I had?
You've asked all of the critical questions.
Okay.
Yeah. So thank you very much for that.
Well, equally blessed for having had you on the program. Thank you so very much, Taur.
Thank you.